4 months ago, we left Australia and moved to La Union, Philippines, to turn old rice terraces into a real working farm. Right now, we're in the middle of the wet season, and the last 2 weeks have been brutal. Over 1 metre of rain, 2 typhoons close together, landslides, flooding, erosion. Some crops are flowering, some got buried. The goats had a rough month, and the chickens, they're only just getting started. So this is our honest 4-month update. What's working, what failed, and what we're changing next. Come walk the farm with me. We didn't come here for a pretty hobby farm. We came to build something that can actually support a family on steep terrace land that used to grow rice. The wet season started a bit late this year, and that gave us a window. So we used it. We got the hand tractor going, worked the terraces, and planted around half of the old rice paddies. Our main bet was red grain sorghum. The thinking was simple. Sorghum can handle dry spells, and if things go well, it might be a crop we can plant once and cut more than once. Stalks and leaves for the goats, grain for the chickens. That was the plan. Now we're 4 months in, right in the middle of wet season, and we're finding out what this land actually does when the rain doesn't stop. Alright, first stop, the main crop. Most of the terraces we planted are red grain sorghum. This is the big one for us. It's dual purpose. The stalks and leaves can go to the goats. The grain, if we get it, is for the chickens. That matters, because every bit of feed we grow here is money we don't have to spend later. And the good news is, it's flowering. It started about 2 weeks ago on the first terrace we planted. Now the bigger terraces down the bottom of the hill are starting to flower too. When you walk through it, you can finally see why we chose this crop. Because the sorghum went in a couple of months earlier, it had time to get established before the worst of the weather hit. And honestly, it stood up to the rain and wind a lot better than I expected. It's bent in places, sure, but it's still standing. That's not to say it got through untouched. We've had a couple of smaller landslides push soil onto one of the sorghum terraces. You can see the scars, but compared to the millet, the sorghum handled it much better. So right now, this is the crop carrying the farm. Not perfect, not finished, but alive, flowering, and still in the fight. Next to the sorghum, we ran a smaller trial proso millet. I only had about 800 grams of seed. Not much, but it took off fast, really fast. In about 3 weeks from planting, it was already flowering and putting on seed. If a crop can move that quickly, you start thinking, hang on, could we stack several plantings in a year? Not that growing 6 crops back to back is always smart. Soil needs a break, but the speed was impressive. The local Filipinos kept asking if it was some kind of rice. Fair enough. It does look a bit like rice when it's up, just much quicker. And for a while, it was one of the best looking plantings on the farm. Then the rain came hard. But it wasn't just rain that wrecked it. A landslide came down from the terrace above. Soil washed straight over the crop. Then water ran through the terrace and finished the job. A lot of the millet got buried, flattened, or smothered in mud. We might still get a little grain from what's left, but realistically, it'll probably just be enough seed to plant again. On the edges of that same terrace we put sunflowers. They have not enjoyed this weather. Some of the bigger ones are trying to flower, and I hope they make it, even if only for the pollinating insects. So millet taught us 2 things fast. Firstly, it can grow incredibly quickly on our farm. And secondly, on these terraces, one landslide can wipe out weeks of work overnight. This next part is one of the hardest to look at. There's a fairly big landslide that damaged the terrace above. You can see where the soil gave way, and once that starts on steep ground, it doesn't just make a mess. It takes planting space, fertility, and a lot of labour with it. Repairing this is going to take serious work. And here's the frustrating bit. The terrace where the landslide started was already a bit of a failed planting, and it just didn't grow. So we re-tilled it only a couple of days before the heavy rain, and we planted again, sorghum with mung beans. The mung beans did start to sprout, then the rain washed them straight out, gone. On the edge we had corn. That didn't germinate well either. A few plants came up, but not enough to call it a real stand. Same story with pigeon peas. I got maybe 10 plants to come up, and I've been trying to keep them, but with this much rain and heavy chicken pressure, I'm not confident. So this terrace is a clean lesson. Weak establishment plus extreme rain on a steep face is a bad combination. Once the soil is loose and the roots aren't holding, water finds the weak point and rips through it. It's ugly right now, but it's also useful. It tells us which terraces need more care, better cover, and maybe a different planting approach before we put more seed and more hope into them. On the same terrace as the millet, we also planted silk sorghum. This one's a forage type, grown more for animal feed than grain. We only had a small amount of seed, so it was always a trial. The wind has bent it over pretty hard, but I think most of it will survive. If it does, the real win is seed. Get seed and we can plant more next round for the goats. Now, crops are only half the feed story. The other half is trees and grass we can cut again and again. We've put a lot of tree cuttings in the ground. Moringa is one of them. Big cuttings, and they're doing well. Putting out shoots, starting to root. Moringa is easy here and it's worth growing. It's nutritious for animals, and the seeds have oil potential later if we ever go that far. Then there's Madre de Agua. This one matters. High protein, grows fast, regrows after cutting. Chickens can use it, goats can use it, and it's one of those plants that belongs in a serious cut and carry system. For us, this is future goat feed hanging in the ground right now. And then Super Napier. We're still propagating it as fast as we can. We've got about 80 plants growing on the edge of a terrace now, all taken from the nursery. The nursery itself is growing fast, but there's a catch. For cuttings, the grass needs to mature. Take it too young and the strike rate drops. Older material roots better, so we can't just strip it the second it looks tall. We have to wait for quality cuttings, not just quick ones. This is the quiet work that doesn't look dramatic on camera, but it might be the most important, because if the goat herd grows and the rain keeps animals off the paddocks, feed has to come from somewhere. Sorghum helps, trees help. Napier is what turns "we hope we have enough grass" into a real system. Now the chickens. 3 weeks ago we bought 30 young Rhode Island Reds. That's the start of our breeding stock. The plan is simple: begin small, learn hard, then multiply, but it did not go to plan. They kept dying, one after the other. We are left with only 5 birds. That's a huge loss. Long term, chickens are meant to be quicker cash flow than goats. Eggs, meat and breeding stock, they turn over faster, but only if the housing is right. Right now, we still need to rebuild the old chicken coop and expand it before these birds grow up. That's a job for this month. Not next month, this month, because young birds get crowded quickly, and once they're stressed, you lose the easy gains you were hoping for. So 5 chickens are here. The dream of 300 birds is still down the track. First, we prove we can keep this 5 healthy, dry, and protected through wet season. Then we scale. Now the goats, and this is where the month got heavy. We've had 2 miscarriages. That's hard to say, because every pregnancy on a small farm matters. It's not just lost animals, it's lost time, lost genetics, lost income that was already half planned in your head. Miscarriages can come from a few things: stress, poor nutrition, and sometimes disease, including problems linked to rats or cats. We haven't seen rats or cats around, so we're hoping it's not that. What we do know is the weather has locked them up more than we'd like. Goats don't like rain, and they really don't like wet feet. When it's this wet, they can't get out and graze properly, so we cut grass and carry it to them. They seem alright with cut and carry. Not panicked, not falling apart. But I'm no goat expert, and after 2 losses, you stop guessing casually. You start watching feed quality, shelter, and stress a lot more carefully. Apart from that, the herd is doing well. They're settling into the place. They're the long-term engine of this farm. Goats are the main game. Crops support them. Chickens help cash flow. But the breeding herd is the big build. The goat shed we put up was very basic. So far, the best upgrade has been a concrete floor. It keeps them dry, and in wet season that matters more than almost anything. The downside is cleaning. Concrete has to be washed down every day with water and a brush. Doable, but constant. Goats also like being up high. They want to climb, they want to lie on something off the ground. So we're changing the setup. I've been looking at proper goat housing designs. Raised floors, slats, bedding systems. What we're going to trial is rice husk over the concrete, plus second-hand plastic goat flooring we found on Marketplace. That's a big deal for us. Large farms use systems like this because you're not scrubbing every day the same way. The husk and manure mix can sit longer, then come out as fertilizer for the terraces, so the shed stops being only a shelter and starts feeding the rest of the farm. While all that was happening, we kept building fence. We put up a lot more electric fence around the large lower terrace that wasn't planted. That was the plan. Lock in a bigger paddock down low, give the goats room, and start using more of the farm properly. Then the rain changed the plan. That lower ground got too wet too fast. So we're moving the new fence up to higher ground on the other side of the valley. It's a bit drier there, and there's still plenty of feed. Not as neat as the original layout, but farming on a hillside in wet season is not about neat. It's about what actually works this week. I'm also thinking about letting the goats onto the steep hillside where we've got mango trees and a lot of forest cover. There's feed there, real feed. The risk is obvious though. If goats stay too long on steep ground, they can strip it and make erosion worse. So it can't be free for all. It has to be controlled time, then rotate them out to other paddocks before they hammer one area. If the weather allows, the goats are moving very soon. Tomorrow even. They need drier feet and a better routine than standing around waiting for the sky to clear. Longer term, I still want them on those lower terraces. There's a lot of kangkong down there. Goats love it, and it's nutritious. We could cut and carry it, but people warn that water plants can carry bacteria and cause trouble. So for now, we're letting it grow. When we do use that area, we'll do it carefully. Bottom line, the fence line we built is not wasted. The map just changed. Higher, drier ground first. Steep country in short rotations. Lower wet terraces later, on our terms, not the Typhoons. So let's be honest about where we are. 4 months in, and wet season has shown us the real farm, not the plan on paper. We got a late start to the rains, and that helped us plant. We got sorghum in early enough that it's flowering now. That matters. We got trials in the ground. We got trees started. We got Napier moving. We got chickens on site. We built fence. We poured a concrete floor in the goat shed. From Australia to this hillside, that is a lot of movement in a short time. But the last 2 weeks also took a swing at us. 2 meters of rain. 2 typhoons close together. Above average rainfall for this area. Landslides, flooding, erosion, millet buried, mung beans washed out, weak terraces exposed, goats stuck on cut and carry. 2 pregnancies lost. Some plantings that looked good on day 20 looked wrecked by day 40. And that's the lesson. On land like this, farming is not just seed and animals. It's water. It's soil holding together. It's shelter. It's feed stored on the stem before you need it. It's fencing that can change when the ground underneath the plant turns to mud. The wet season didn't end the farm. It graded it. showed us what was strong, what was early, and what was wishful thinking. That's useful even when it hurts. So what are we doing now? First, move the goats. Higher ground, better footing, fresh fence. If the weather gives us a gap, that happens straight away. Standing still in the wet is not a strategy. Second, upgrade the shed. Concrete was step one. Next is the rice husk bedding and those plastic floors. If that works, daily cleaning gets easier, the goats stay happier, and the manure becomes fertilizer instead of just a chore. Third, the chicken coop. Those Rhode Island Reds are not going to stay small. This month we rebuild their house. Keeping these 5 birds alive is critical. Fourth, keep pushing fodder. Super Napier, Madre de Agua, Moringa. This is the feed bank. Every successful cutting now is pressure off the system later when the herd needs more than we can casually carry. Fifth, watch the sorghum. It's flowering. That means decisions are coming. Do we push for grain for the chickens, take forage for the goats, or split the difference terrace by terrace? We don't have to guess today, but we do have to pay attention. And sixth, repair. The landslide terraces don't fix themselves. When the rain eases enough to work safely, we start putting ground back together, because every broken terrace is lost planting space and a future erosion risk. There's also seed to save where we can. Millet leftovers. Silk sorghum if it hangs on. On a new farm, seed is not a side note, it's options. None of this is fancy, it's just the next hard practical steps. Dry goats, safe birds, more feed, standing crops, and ground that holds when the sky opens again. So that's 4 months on this farm. Not a highlight reel, not a failure story either. Just the truth of starting over on steep old rice land in a new country with a family depending on it, right as wet season arrived in force. Some things work better than we hoped. Sorghum is flowering, fodder plants are taking. Infrastructure is going in. The animals are here. Some things hurt. Landslides, lost plantings, 2 goat miscarriages, lost chickens, plans that had to move uphill because the lower ground turned against us. But we're still here, still building, still learning what this land allows and what it punishes. If you farm through heavy rain, steep country, or a rough patch with livestock, I'd like to hear what helped you. Drop it in the comments. Thanks for walking the terraces with us. We'll film the goat move next and show you whether these next changes actually hold. See you in the next one.